I kept running to him. That's when I knew my faith was real, was because when I knew nothing else, when the darkness was so dark, and I thought, I will never laugh again, I will never look forward to the sun coming up again. I kept running to that foundation that I had built, and I found peace and joy, and I learned that I could hold sadness and joy at the same time. And in that, hope again.
Morning. You got time for a short interview?
Sure.
Yeah?
Great shirt. Thank you.
Are you okay if I record it?
What?
Are you okay if I record it?
Sure.
Okay.
Where are you going to put it?
Not all the talks end up on YouTube, but the more interesting ones do.
Okay.
So I do something called Street Epistemology, and I ask people to pick a belief that they really think is true. It could be anything. And what I do is I ask questions to understand what you believe, why you believe it, and more importantly, how you concluded that it's true.
Okay.
And talks, can be just about 5 minutes. I just time it for 5 minutes to respect people's time. But they can go, if you have time and I have time, it could go on for like an hour sometimes. So it just depends. I think the more interesting talks tend to be the ones that the belief that you want to talk about is something you're highly confident in, that you think is true, and if you didn't have that belief tomorrow, it would affect your actions somehow. So it's like significant, I guess.
Yeah.
So I can give you some examples of what people talk about, but if you have something in mind.
Give me some examples.
So some examples would be, I believe karma is real and happening. I believe the theory of evolution is true. I believe my horoscope predicts my day. I believe prayer works. I believe in a God. I believe I saw ghosts.
I haven't seen a ghost.
I believe, my attitude can control my day or something like that.
Okay.
It really just depends on the person. So,
I believe God is real.
You want to do that one?
Sure.
Okay. All right, let me set that timer. All right. So I talk to a lot of people, so I never want to assume which God do you believe is real.
Yeah. I believe the God of the Bible.
Okay. Let's do that.
Good
okay.
assumption.
All right.
How long have you been doing this?
I think it's almost 2 years.
Really?
Yeah. It's like it's a little hobby I have. I'm not the first person to do it. In fact, I saw someone else doing it.
Yeah.
So I started.
So has it influenced what you think?
Some of them have.
Really?
Yeah. So what I tried to do is remain neutral to whatever the
in the moment.
Yeah. So I just try to be neutral and ask questions to uncover like the foundation of why people believe what they believe in and the method they use.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like some conversations that they kind of made me think a little bit.
Really?
Yeah. So
that's cool.
All right. So I want to get a sense of how confident you are in this belief. So I use the scale from 0 to 100. 0 meaning I have no confidence, all questions, I'm not even sure this is true. 100% meaning I have all confidence, no questions, I cannot be mistaken about this. Where would you fall in that?
100.
100%. Okay. There we go. What would you say is the main reason that gets you to that 100%?
Because being raised in a difficult family that took me to church all the time.
Okay.
So there was this, I was raised with a foundation, but there was always the question, always, of is all this real? Because of what I was experiencing at home. Okay. So always the question, but I just kept kept hanging with it. My daughter died in my arms.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry to hear that.
And what held me and sustained me, all the questions were answered. I mean, if anything, the gift that her death gave me was the 100 of knowing the faith that I had been building and wondering about, even in my doubt, even in my, is this real? Is the whole heaven, hell, is all that real? Is this God real? I found that to be true in her death. And the most convincing part of it was at her funeral. So when you're young, people don't expect your little kids to die.
Yeah.
And ours happened really fast. Nobody saw it coming. It took everybody by shock. And so I was in a church, packed out church, full church. Everybody had the same look on their face. I can't imagine. And that was so isolating to me. I felt like I was sitting there in this church by myself, but surrounded by people. And in my head, as the service started, sorry, I start praying, explaining to the God that I have wondered about, hoped for, explaining to him this was wrong, I can't do this. I don't know what you're going to do to get me out of this, but I can't do this. And in a moment, I heard in this voice, I know it sounds weird, I heard this clearly. I know what you mean. I had to watch my kid die too. And in that moment, I knew the God I had learned about all my life, the God I had wondered about all my life, the God who I knew it was 2 weeks after Easter. I just celebrated Easter. I knew that story. I'd never considered that God, the angry, vengeful God of the Old Testament, the merciful God who gets the Israelites across on dry land. All of those different characteristics, I never viewed him as grieving parent. But in the moment when I was the grieving parent, he sat down beside me and said, come on, we can do this. Because this, as lovely as this isn't it. There's so much more to it. So it's 100. I don't care what you say or all those other people say.
Yeah.
That, because if that weren't true, I would, there would have been no reason to continue.
Wow. Because
I knew where she was. Like, people say, I'm so sorry that you lost your child. I hate that phrase, because that to me, I internalize that as I did something wrong and like misplaced her, I knew exactly where she was. So in my human brain, the answer to that is, then I'll go where she is. But see, I believe the 100%. I believe there's more here for me to do, more here for me to experience. And so this isn't it. This is a shadow of what's coming.
So that belief, as a kid growing up and going through it, you had your doubts, and but you said you held on to it, and at that moment at the church when the funeral happened, that if you didn't have that belief, let's say you decided to
if he wouldn't have said that, go ahead.
Yeah, let's say if you abandoned that, and so you weren't in that state of mind when that all happened.
Right. What would happen?
Do you think you wouldn't have?
I wouldn't have survived.
You wouldn't have made it.
No. There's a reason why. And in my grief, I was very methodical. So I had this thought. A lot of people in AA, when they explain where it started, they point back to their kid died. So my thought was, well, if that's where people begin their drinking, maybe there's something to it. Maybe I can relieve this utter darkness and pain that I feel with something else. So if I wouldn't have had that hope, if he wouldn't have said that, if I wouldn't have heard those words, could I have gone on? Would I still today say 100? Yes. Because I kept running to him. That's when I knew my faith was real. Was because when I knew nothing else, when the darkness was so dark, and I thought, I will never laugh again. I will never look forward to the sun coming up again. I kept running to that foundation that I had built, and I found peace and joy, and I learned that I could hold sadness and joy at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, hope again. Hope of, this isn't it. When I die, it's not just burying me and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
That there is something more. There's a God who could who could figure out how to make those stay up there and look that way. I think he can handle what I'm dealing with here.
Mm. So this belief gives you hope to continue, even in the face of
and
such
joy in the and joy right here. Yeah.
And even in the face of tragedy.
Yeah.
Okay. This might be a difficult question.
Nah.
But hypothetically, and I'm not saying this is the case.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, if this God didn't exist, would you want to know it?
No. But hypothetically.
Yeah.
No. No, because if he doesn't, and this has been a waste, I'm still going to bank on he's real. I'm still gonna hope.
Because it still it still carries you through, even until this day probably.
Yeah.
Even
yeah.
I don't know how long ago that was, but
22 years.
Yeah.
This is her story. Lived and died. Love continues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for the talk.
Have fun. I'm sweaty.
That's all right. No, I'm totally used to it.
All right.
Have a good day.
You bet.